Hello, I'm Christina Chu, and this is part 2 of my story and life lessons series. I'm going to show you a photo. This was me around the time that I'm going to be talking about. So this week, I heard the question, why do we need to learn this? A common question that teachers hear from students. I am a teacher who tutors students one-on-one, and something I have tried to tell students is that English literature and social studies are what's called the humanities. Why they're called the humanities is because they're trying to teach us how to be better humans and to treat other humans in a way that is better. So yeah, it's meant to teach us good things. And as we reflect on the stories, if we could learn the lessons from the stories itself, we might not have to learn it the hard way. And why we study history is that it's supposed to help us to keep from repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. Humans, though, often do make the same mistakes because we are flawed people. So please listen to the lessons I've learned from my life and apply them to your life. That's why I'm sharing this. So if you've been following my series of my life and life lessons, you would have heard about my new birth in Jesus. And I grew by leaps and bounds, and it was a very special time in my life. And all of you will understand that, yeah, we go from where everything goes well to often harder seasons of life and in God's lessons and training of us. So why do we need to learn that? It's because God cares about our character to become more loving and Christ-like and better humans. So one of the prayers that I prayed at that time was, Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds. In our day, in our time, make them known. Make them known. I have been tutoring for years now, but when I first started tutoring over 30 years ago, I had students then, as I do now, and I've always cared for my students. And these families back then were being affected by the Asian gang problem, and it was really bad at that time. All these Asian gangs, Chinese gangs, Vietnamese gangs, East Indian gangs, Filipino gangs. There was lots of these different gangs that were recruiting people from schools. And some of my students or their family members got involved and were in a lot of trouble. So I prayed and prayed, Lord, please raise up someone to help them. And God convinced me, even though I didn't believe it, that I could do something to help. So I'll skip forward some years of volunteering and so on at different schools and getting in touch with people at Gladstone and Van Tech and so on, to when I was in Youth for Christ, I became a staff member, and I rented out a gym, not exactly at the place that I was expecting, but God knew, because when I rented out this gym, it so happened that the Patok boys, which are a Filipino gang, were hanging out all the time at near the school outside playing basketball. And God provided me a person who really had a heart to start a basketball ministry for youth at risk. He provided me some other wonderful women who just became, such a wonderful team. And he provides some other people from like Chinese churches that I went to speak at and so on. And I had a great team when we started this Asian gym program. And of course, we opened our doors and all these guys who had been playing basketball outside just came in. And so I had a successful and growing ministry in Youth for Christ, the first of its kind, towards Asian gang youth. And I was leading this for about 3 years, had been volunteering about a year and a half before that. So yeah, I was in a wonderful ministry. God provided every month lots of donors and supporters for me. It would have been nice to have, like continued that ministry. But that wasn't what God had in mind only. So through YWAM, I ended up, and through the connection with Hong Kong Youth for Christ, I ended up meeting Jackie Pullinger and her ministry in Hong Kong, because I wanted to find somebody else who worked with gang people, especially these special Asian gangs that were, very organized crime. And so through that, I met John Toh, who was staying in town as part of his time away from the ministry to discern some things. I also took him around and we ended up praying with people. And I felt, God calling me to step out of Youth for Christ because something that he had put on my heart. Now, all along, I had on my heart, like when people, all these young people who became Christians, they always seem to hit a wall at a certain point in time. And what I realized is that a lot of people just get caught back up in the same environment that was destructive to them or held kind of, the wrong influences upon their life. And I'd always been someone who was asking God questions. And God showed me that, these young people would do so much better if they were surrounded by support. A group of people or a family or a community that would help them towards like living out that true discipleship and getting past the barriers that hindered them. So God said for me to find a house and start this ministry. I did talk to Youth for Christ and asked them if it would be possible to do that ministry with them. But unfortunately, at that time, they were not into that form of ministry. So I had to step out of Youth for Christ to do that. And it was pretty hard to do that. It was really scary. But God used a scripture. And I want to ask that you pause this now and read Matthew 14, 22 to 36. That's Matthew 14, 22 to 36. So hopefully you've read that. Right after John the Baptist gets beheaded, Jesus tries to withdraw to a remote and solitary place where he could process that and pray about the ministry God was calling him into. Crowds were following him. He was popular, but he couldn't even get away from the crowds. And here, all these people show up, and out of his compassion, Jesus performs the feeding of the 5,000. Well, it's actually more than 5,000 because it was 5,000 men, but there was also women and children. So you can imagine the multitude of people that had come. A lot of them poor, so they wouldn't have been able to afford the food. And so Jesus feeds them. And then afterwards, he sends the disciples away and he sends the crowds away so that he would have time to pray alone. Peter and all the rest of the disciples go in the boat across the Sea of Galilee, and the wind and the waves start up when they're in the middle of the Sea of Galilee. And in the midst of this great squall, with all of them thinking they're going to perish, I mean, even these seasoned fishermen, Jesus comes walking on the water. And they thought at first that it was a ghost. And they were terrified. I think I would have been super terrified. Probably you would be too. And do you think that that it was foolish for Peter to say, Jesus, if it's you, then tell me to come to you on the waves? Why even ask that? Like, some of us think it's a crazy story. Like, if you put yourself in Peter's place, like, I want to get out of the boat onto the stormy waters? Probably not for most of us. Was it about power? Like, boy, Peter wanted power? Or was it about love? We hope that the motives that call us into things in ministry is love. And Jesus said, come. And I believe that it must have been the motive of love for Jesus to have said, come to Peter. Yeah, Peter wanted so much to be like Jesus and to follow and dare to do everything Jesus was doing and be fully obedient and fully, just so close to Jesus all the time. He wanted to be like his master. So, Lord, if it's you, then call me to come and I will. So yeah, this story was the story that Jesus used to call me out. Get out of that comfortable boat and come towards me. Come further. Go fuller in and farther up. I was willing to step out of this growing ministry and hand over the gym program and everything else to the team of very good volunteers that Jesus had raised up, and step out in faith. Now, another thing that was important as well to me was that I felt that we needed to be in solidarity with the least and the last. So as Jesus told me to look for a house, I really felt Jesus said, find it in the downtown East Side. And I went looking everywhere to try to find a place, but it wasn't so easy to find a house at that time. And another thing was I had read all these stories about Hudson Taylor and George Mueller. And for them, they really believed God to provide. And somehow God put in my heart that that was important too. You see, in our day, in our world, we actually worship the God of money. Whether we want to believe it or not, that's the idol that we need to overcome. You see, for many of us, even in churches as Christians, we will base our decisions on how much money we have. And so where's our trust? Is it in God or money? Well, a lot of times it seems like it's money. It's not in our budget. If we're, we wouldn't even risk it. Like a lot of ministries, we won't even step out if we don't think we'll have the money to back it up and have it all the money first before we'll step out and do anything. But that wasn't the way Hudson Taylor and George Mueller and many, many others. I mean, Gladys Allward, I mean, you could go on and on about the people who trusted God and stepped out before everything was in place. Anyways, I felt from God that we also, in our day, in our time, need to overcome our dependence on money and also our worship of money, because we trust more in money than in God a lot of times. And a lot of people are seeking money. I mean, my whole family, that was what was important to them. And of course, I understand it's something where we need money, right? All of us understand that. But who are we relying upon? And are we taking all of our time and effort to seek for money and a comfortable lifestyle rather than the true discipleship, the way of the cross and of giving and sacrificial, self-giving love that Jesus showed us? And he said, come, follow me, imitate me. If we're his disciples, like any sifu, any master, it means you become like your master. You walk in the way of your master. So I also felt it was important to step out in faith, and as, kind of like a prophetic statement, that I trusted God more than I just trusted what money I had or didn't have. So I stepped out, and what I'm going to share is the miracles that God provided. I stepped out of Youth for Christ. 5 to 6 months later, I'm still looking for a house. It didn't come fast or easy. I spent most of my time praying and just looking for the house. But I kept in relational contact with the people that I had reached out to, the youth. And one of them ended up in prison at the remand center. At that time, it was in the downtown East Side, near the police station that was on Main Street. And I went down there to visit him. And afterwards, this is in January, so it was cold. And Jesus said, walk down the length of Union Street. So I started to walk down the length of Union Street. And it was very cold. So after a while, I was kind of thinking, maybe I want to stop. Maybe that wasn't God. But God said, keep walking. So I kept walking. And lo and behold, there was this sign in front of this house. And I just knew this was like gift wrapped from God for us. I wanted to right away phone the phone number. God said, walk around that block and pray. And yeah, after praying, then God said, yeah, call that number. I called the number, and the landlady said, yeah, I can come out tonight. I quickly phoned up Brenda, who had been part of the ministry with Jackie Pullinger, St. Stephen's Society, that John Toh had already also been part of. And she had come home from Hong Kong and was living in Langley at the time. And yeah, I went back home, told my mom. I had already told her before what I was intending to do. And yeah, she wanted to come out and see the house with me. So that night, I said I would meet Brenda at the SkyTrain because she was going to take the SkyTrain from Surrey after she takes a bus from Langley to Surrey. And I went there to pick her up, waited for quite a long time. So I thought, oh no, I'm going to be late in meeting the landlady. But finally, it seemed like God kind of nudged me to go to the other side of the road of Main Street. And I found her on the other side. So we had both been waiting for quite a while, but on the wrong side of the street. So I had dropped my mom off before that, before picking up, going to pick up Brenda. So we got there, and the landlady had been talking to my mom. But there was a whole house full of people looking through, and all these people who were ready to rent. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm not sure I'm in time to rent. Anyways, thank God. Yeah, probably because my mom had talked to her in Chinese and I was Chinese. The landlady said to me, if you want to rent it, I'll rent it to you. I walked upstairs with Brenda to look at the house. And I said, did that landlady say she would rent it to me? Like, I didn't believe it, right? And that must be God, right? Moving on her heart. And Brenda said, yeah. And I didn't even look through the rest of the house. I ran back downstairs and I said, let's rent it, like to Brenda. And yeah, we went down the stairs. We told the landlady, we'll rent it. And I wrote her the check. I didn't even know how much money was in my bank because, yeah, I just didn't know. But, and I just trusted that God would provide. And believe me, I didn't have a lot of money. So afterwards, I said I'd be willing to take my landlady home as well as Brenda. Yeah, I found out she lived in Coquitlam, and so yeah, I drove her home. I drove her, yeah, all the way home. But God already also gave us an opportunity to talk to her in the car. So this landlady, this Chinese landlady, was surprised that Brenda, who's a Caucasian Canadian, knew how to speak Cantonese. And Brenda was able to share that, well, she had been, in Hong Kong doing this kind of work, helping drug addicts and so on. And also I had put on a tape. Actually, I might have done that before Brenda spoke. And I said, Brenda's singing this song, and the landlady had said, oh, how do you know how to speak or sing in Cantonese? And so, yeah, we were both able to share our testimonies, especially Brenda, of how she ended up doing this work in Hong Kong. So yeah, totally wonderful that we got to share about Jesus with this landlady. And she was really open too. And I also had told her as well, because for me, it was important to be honest and have integrity. And I said to the landlady, I want to let you know what we're planning to use this house for. Well, just like Brenda was, helping drug addicts in Hong Kong, I plan to do that here and get young people off the street and help them to start towards a new life. Now, I didn't think that she would go for that. Not a lot of Chinese landlords and landladies would have gone for that. But somehow she was really open and she was really positive. And she said, oh, that's wonderful that you guys are going to be doing this and helping people. And so, yeah, we had the green light, go ahead in every way. So, yeah, took the landlady home, took Brenda home. And the next day, I had some letters and I opened them up and there were checks in the mail. And so, yeah, I totaled up the checks that I got in the mail. And they were enough for the first month's rent and the damage deposit. So the check that I had written already to the landlady. And also there was $5 extra. And I just thought, that's just like God, right? I said, why? Why the extra $5? And he said, well, that's to pay for the gas that it took for you to take the landlady and Brenda back home. I mean, that's God. So miraculous provision. And every month that we were there for around 2 years, God provided. And it wasn't, through, I didn't have a job. I stayed there helping to take care of the young people that he started to pour in almost like right away. So the first person we took in was Veronica, and she was one of the young girls that we knew from the Asian gym program that I knew, and she needed a place to stay. So just the need came up, and so I took her in. And not long after that, a couple of us were going down, walking down to, at that time, the Granville area was full of young people that had run away from home. And we took in a couple of people almost like right away. So and then the word gets out and more people come. And it was amazing too that we saved a couple of people from like a gang fight and stuff. And then we took them in as well. Anyways, just lots of people. And as we grew and we had more people, I remember one morning, because we would pray every morning together. Every day we would spend time praying for the ministry and for all the young people that we had at our place and the issues in their life. And trying to listen to God for what he wanted us to do. Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of the people who came to help us, his whole heart was to, spend time in prayer. And he was Eugene, he was quite the prayer warrior. Grateful for all the people that God sent our way, both in terms of the staff and the young people that came off the street that we bumped into or met, or it was was amazing, the divine appointments. Anyways, so one morning we were praying, Lord, we really need more towels and blankets, and because we have so many people now. And not long after we prayed, somebody came to our door. There was a knock. I opened the door. This lady from the church came and said, would you happen to need some towels and blankets? And probably I stood there with my mouth kind of open, like, anyways, that's like one of the provisions. Another one was also a pretty shocking thing. We took these young people to also help out this feeding ministry, this Christian feeding ministry. Yeah, like we wanted to, help them to do positive things and gain work experience and help out, give back to the ministries that have given to them, because they had, it was a bus that used to come down to Granville Street giving out food. And so many of them had benefited from this ministry. So we went there to help them sort out bread. As you know, many of these ministries towards the poor, they get donations of bread. But yeah, you have to sort them out to make sure they're not moldy and stuff. So that's what we used to do. And they would give us bread to take home. The problem was we could only take so much because we had one refrigerator and a little freezer space. And yeah, I guess in my mind, I was thinking, God, it would really be wonderful if we could have a big freezer. And lo and behold, the next thing I know, this, there's a ring on the phone. Pick up the phone. It was a landline. We did used to have those before. And the person on the end said to me, my mom is moving out of her place. She has a really big freezer, and I was just wondering if you could make use of that. I almost dropped the phone. I was so surprised. But yeah, it's funny how we get surprised that God does answer our prayer. Anyways, I said, oh yeah, that would be so super. Like now we could get the bread and other food that people donate to us, and we can actually put it somewhere. It was a really big freezer. I mean, somebody could sleep on top of it. It's that long and wide as well. So yeah, really gigantic freezer. And and we had the space to put it in, which was amazing too. So yeah, that's another wonderful provision. And I'm telling you these stories because I want you to know that God can do now what he has done before. And God is faithful, and he is a provider. Like, yeah, miraculous provision, like 5,000, feeding 5,000 is nothing for Jesus. And yeah, there's leftovers as well. So yeah, so we, I'll tell you about a really amazing story of provision. So one time, we had this good connection with YWAM. That's how I got to connect with Jackie Pullinger, as well as Youth for Christ in Hong Kong. And I had visited her. So yeah, at this point in time, we found out from YWAM that each summer they have a thing called GoFest. And one of the people I knew there said, if you could, like if God has it in your heart, if you feel this is something God is calling you to do, you could bring your whole household. By that time, they knew that we had a whole big household. I think we had 12 people at the time or something like that, maybe even more. Yeah, I think it was more because there was, some of us who were staff there as well. They said, if you want to bring out your household, we will waive the entrance fee. So I thought, oh, well, that sounds awesome. We just have to find a way to get out there. The next thing was one of our staff contacted her dad, who lives out in Vernon, because we were trying to figure out, well, we have to stay somewhere while we're out there going to the GoFest. And her dad said, sure, you could come out with your friends. I don't think he understood what he was getting himself in for. But anyways, we thought, okay, so we have a place to stay. We have, this entrance fee all cleared out. So we're praying, God, okay, now you just have to provide us with transportation. The night before we had to leave, before the start of the GoFest, because it would take us time to get there before the beginning. Have a phone call, and one of our friends who knew about this ministry, she said, you'll never guess what. I ended up talking to somebody tonight, and yeah, she would like to come out and see your ministry. So this lady comes out. She tells us the story that months back, she had gained a lot of money from her business. And God had said, to put aside a certain amount of money. And and God had said to her, I'll tell you when and what ministry to give it to. So she had kept it aside until she had heard the story from one of our friends. And God told her, that's the ministry. And I want you to go right now and give it to them. So she said, do you have any particular need right now? And I laughed, and I said to her, well, it seems like God would want us to go out, to the GoFest that YWAM has, to bring our household out there. And like your money would help provide for that. And she very happily said, yes, I believe this money was set aside for that. And it was amazing. I mean, other people will probably attest to the fact that God often provides at the last minute. He's never late, but he often doesn't provide like ahead of time either. So anyways, it was enough time for us to, quickly get everything together. I was gonna drive one of our girls back home anyways, either way, because she had decided, she had run away from home and she had decided to go home. So we thought, oh, this is excellent. She could come in the car with me. Along the way to us going to the GoFest, I could drop her off. I took a couple of the other girls in my car as well. I had a very small little car. They don't even exist anymore. It was called a Vega. It was a small little hatchback, but with a hatchback, we could take a lot of the bags of clothes and stuff like that we needed. So we put all the stuff in the Vega back, the hatchback, and I loaded the three girls with me. We set off like the next day. And the rest of them went with another staff on the bus, because now we had enough money for them to all go on the bus out to Vernon, because that's where the house that her dad lived at was at. So we headed out, all of us. And I guess the plan was that, I would drop off this girl back home. That was amazing. It was a reunion, and it was amazing to see that. And there was some people that stayed at our house. There was a couple of ones who had found work, some of those young people, and they couldn't go out with us. One was in a training program, and one had a job. We had Eugene, who was praying, who stayed at the house, and a couple other people too. of the staff. So that it was fine. It worked out well. So yeah, everyone who wanted to go was able to go. And when we got into Vernon, I dropped the girls off. I went and started, doing this run back and forth to pick up the rest of the people and their stuff, whatever other stuff that didn't come in the car. And when we got to where one of our staff's dad was, this was another amazing provision, because he said, "Oh, you never guess what? Like, I rent out this farm to these other people, and they're away on holiday." And I asked them before they were leaving on holiday that, "Oh, my daughter's coming up with some of her friends. Would they be able to stay at your house and your farm?" And so they said yes. So you actually have a place to stay all to yourselves, like a whole house and a whole big farm. So that was wonderful provision. And I was so relieved, because I thought, yeah, I don't know how he would have taken it with a whole gigantic house full of people. We were over 10 people there. So anyways, so we stayed at this farm. So there was a place to stay. And the other wonderful provision that we had never would have seen ahead of time either, was that he said, well, a couple of months back, or a few months back, I think it was actually a few months back, somebody had this junky old car, and he was quite the fix-it man, and he loved tinkering with cars. And so he thought he would fix it up. And he just so happened to fix it up before we came. He didn't even know of our need for transportation. But when he realized how many of us there were, he said, "Well, guess what? I just finished fixing this car. I'd be willing to insure it for you guys for the time you're here, so you can go back and forth without any problem." So there we were. We had a place to stay. We had, and I have to say, at that point in time, there wasn't the seatbelt laws that we have now. So actually we could pile people in the car a lot more than we did now. It was a big old car. We were able to stuff all the people in that car and my little car, and head out to YWAM, to the GoFest. God never does that without a purpose too. So the reason was that many of these people became Christians, or had a rededication of their life, and were touched deeply by the Holy Spirit, and by the teaching of Dean Sherman, and by the music by Bob Fitz. And there was just such a sense of the Holy Spirit. They were all touched by God's love. They had never known God's love that way before. Me neither. It was something very wonderful. So it was an amazing time. And I think for the whole household, knowing how God provided too, was testimony to them also of God's faithfulness, and care and love for them. So I share that to say God is faithful. He's a wonderful God. He can do miracles. I also share that so that you would be able to understand what I'm going to share in the next portion of my story, where I will talk about deep disappointment and disillusionment. I think anyone who has ever been in ministry before will go through that season as well. For years, it was really hard for me to overcome what came next. But you have to understand first the glory days, the before you understand what happened next. And like Peter, I ended up almost sinking and drowning. Yet, just like Peter, you've done it out of love and obedience. A lot of zeal, not a lot of wisdom. And when Peter was almost drowning, Jesus saved him. And Jesus saved me too. With Jesus, he has lessons to teach us. Why? That's a question we ask a lot. Why did it have to go through that? But there's important lessons. And we have a good teacher who cares about us a lot. So many people might say Peter was foolish. He was the only one of the disciples who even tried to get out of the boat. But he was also the only one who experienced that miracle. And with Jesus, it's okay. He's okay with our mistakes. He's okay with our doubt. He's okay with our questions. He's okay when, we end up not being able to trust enough. I guess he's seen it lots. So like Peter, Peter cries out to Jesus, please save me. And Jesus said, come. And he took him by the hand and took him back into the boat, said, why did you doubt? But I don't think it was a harsh reprimand. Because Peter could have walked all the way back, like to Jesus and back to the boat. But he got, scared with the wind and the waves. And for any of us who go through ministry, the wind and the waves are pretty hard. And I'll tell you more about that in the next life lesson part 3. But I guess why I wanted to share this was also for you to learn. Remember, when Jesus tells you to step out, trust him. And it's worth the risk to love and to go the full way of the cross. The reasons we did what we did was good. And you do anything in obedience to Jesus, he will provide, and he does miracles. He is worthy, and he will always prove faithful. So until next time, please tune in next time as well.